My daughter-in-law had the keys to my house, and she had turned my life into her personal amusement park. She rummaged through my drawers as if they were her own. She wore my clothes without asking for permission. She slept in my bed when I wasn't there. She brought her entire family to spend the holidays in my home without even giving me a heads up. "The house is huge. Eleanor, you don't even use all of it," she'd laugh, while her mother settled into the guest room and her sister took over my late husband's study. I was only 65 years old, yet I already felt invisible in my own home. But what Brittany didn't know was that I was planning something. In absolute silence, I bought a condo in a gated community 800 miles away. 24-hour security, cameras on every corner. No one would have access without my authorization. I didn't give the new address to anyone, not even my own son. I changed the locks on my house 2 days before I moved out, and when she opened the door, expecting to find my home full of things to loot, she only saw empty walls and an echo. Her scream resonated down the entire hallway. My phone blew up with 89 missed calls, but I was already 800 miles away, drinking coffee on my new balcony, watching the sun reflect off windows that only I had the right to open. But let's back up, because to understand how I reached that point of total rupture, you need to know every humiliation, every invasion, every moment I swallowed my rage and smiled when what I wanted to do was scream. My name is Eleanor, and this story begins 6 months before my disappearance, back when I still believed that words and soft boundaries could work. Back when I still thought my daughter-in-law would understand the basic concept of respect. How naive I was. I am 65 years old and have been a widow for 3. My husband, Arthur, died of a heart attack while he was pruning the rose bushes in the backyard. I found him collapsed among the coral-colored flowers he loved so much. From that day on, this 4-bedroom house became more than just a piece of real estate. It became my emotional fortress. The only place where I could still feel his presence in the mornings, when the sun streamed through the kitchen window exactly how he liked it, where his clothes still hung in the closet, even though they no longer smelled of his cologne, where his books were still alphabetized on the shelves in the study, which no one else ever used again. I bought this house with Arthur 32 years ago. We paid every dollar with brutal sacrifice. He worked double shifts at the auto plant, and I tutored math until 11 at night. Sometimes we ate nothing but peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for weeks just to pay the mortgage. But it was ours, completely ours. It has a garden with cherry trees I planted myself. A small pool we built when we could finally afford it after 15 years of saving. Hardwood floors that Mason, my only son, stained with grape juice when he was 6. We never wanted to remove that stain. It was part of our history. After Arthur's death, I dedicated myself to maintaining this house as a temple of memories. Every object had its place, every room kept its purpose. The house has plenty of space. 4 bedrooms for a single person sounds excessive, I know, but each one held something important. The master suite, where Arthur and I slept for almost 30 years. Mason's room, which I kept intact even though he didn't live here anymore. The guest room, with the ivory curtains my mother sewed before she passed. And the study-turned-library, where Arthur spent his afternoons reading detective novels. I am a retired math teacher. I spent 40 years teaching algebra and geometry to teenagers who preferred staring out the window. I retired 2 years ago with a modest but sufficient pension, $2,500 a month that I manage with millimetric care. I'm not rich, but I don't need help from anyone either. I live alone. I cook for myself. I clean my house. I water my plants. I visit Mason once a week. I thought I had finally found that peace I yearned for after the grieving process. Until Brittany entered our lives like a hurricane disguised as a charming daughter-in-law. Mason met Brittany 2 years ago at a sales conference. He works for a software company, and she was the event coordinator. 32 years old, 12 years younger than my son. Perfect smile, long, chestnut hair, always flawless. Acrylic nails she changed every week. Tight, expensive clothes. I liked her at first. She seemed cheerful, polite. She kissed my cheek when we were introduced and said she had heard wonderful things about me. They got married 8 months later in a small ceremony. I paid for part of the reception, $5,000 I took from my savings because Mason insisted that Brittany dreamed of that specific venue with a view of the lake. I didn't mind. He was my only son. I wanted to see him happy. At the wedding, Brittany danced with me and called me Mom Eleanor, with that sweet voice I would later discover was pure acting. The first few months were normal. They came to visit on Sundays. We ate together. Brittany praised my cooking. She helped wash the dishes. She showed interest in my plants. Mason seemed in love. I was happy to see him like that. After 2 failed relationships, he had finally found someone who made him smile. But then, the first invasion happened. Small, almost imperceptible. The kind of thing one dismisses as a kind gesture, even though something in your gut tells you it's not right. It was a Tuesday in March. I had left early for my routine doctor's appointment, blood pressure check and blood work. I came back around noon. I put the key in the lock and noticed something strange. The door was unlocked. I always lock the door. Always. It's a habit I've had since Arthur died, and I was left alone. I entered slowly, feeling that uncomfortable prickle on the back of my neck. The house smelled different, like lemon pledge. I use white vinegar to clean. Always. I walked toward the kitchen and stopped dead in my tracks. Someone had completely reorganized my cabinets. The glasses that had always been in the cabinet to the left were now on the right. The pots I kept next to the stove had been moved to the cabinet under the sink. The spice jars I had ordered alphabetically were now organized by size. Brittany came out of the laundry room with a huge smile and yellow rubber gloves. Surprise! Mom, Eleanor! I cleaned the whole house. Mason gave me his key so I could come over while you weren't here. I wanted you to arrive and find everything sparkling. I stood there with my purse still hanging from my arm, feeling something twist inside my chest. Something that wasn't gratitude. You didn't have to bother, Brittany. It's no bother. This house is so big, it must be exhausting to maintain it alone. I reorganized the kitchen to make it more practical. You'll see how easy it will be to find everything now. But I didn't want it to be easier in her way. I had my own system, a 30-year-old system that worked perfectly. I didn't say anything that day. I just smiled and said thank you, while Brittany proudly showed me every change she had made without my permission. She had washed the living room curtains, moved the throw pillows on the couch, rearranged my cookbooks that were perfectly ordered by cuisine type and were now arranged by color. By color. As if they were decoration and not tools, I consulted weekly. She had thrown out 3 jars of homemade jam that according to her were too old, even though I had made them just 2 months prior. She had folded my towels differently, changed the location of my plants, moved the ceramic vase Arthur gave me for our 10th anniversary from a shelf where it had been for 22 years to the dining room table where it clearly didn't fit. It looks more modern this way, don't you think? She said, while I felt something silently break inside me. But I swallowed the discomfort. I told myself they were good intentions, that Brittany just wanted to help, that I was being too sensitive about objects and places, that I should be grateful to have a daughter-in-law who cared. That night I called Mason. I told him with the calmest voice possible that I appreciated Brittany's gesture, but that I would prefer she let me know before coming over next time, that it made me uncomfortable for someone to enter my house when I wasn't there. Mom, Brittany just wanted to give you a nice surprise. Why do you always have to look at the negative side of everything? You should be happy to have a daughter-in-law like that. Most mothers-in-law complain that their daughters-in-law never visit them. I stayed silent, feeling that somehow I was the villain of this story for wanting privacy in my own home. I hung up the phone and spent 2 hours returning everything to its original place. The glasses to their cabinet, the pots next to the stove, the books ordered as they always were, Arthur's vase back to its shelf. When I finished, it was 11 at night and my knees hurt, but at least my house felt like mine again. I thought that would be the end of it, that Brittany would take the hint. How foolish I was to believe that a single, soft conversation could stop what was coming. 2 weeks later, I came back from doing my monthly shopping. I had gone to the supercenter, which is 40 minutes away by bus because the prices are better there. I spent $120 on groceries for the whole month. I arrived tired, with 4 heavy bags that I laboriously carried up the front steps. I opened the door and almost dropped everything on the floor. Brittany was in my living room, sitting on my sofa, watching TV. But it wasn't that which left me paralyzed. It was what she was wearing, my dress. The lavender dress with white floral embroidery that Arthur had bought me for our 25th anniversary. The one I kept wrapped in tissue paper in the back of the closet because it was too special to wear for just any occasion. The one that still smelled faintly of his cologne because the last time I wore it was our final anniversary dinner together, 3 months before he died. Brittany saw me come in and smiled as if it were nothing. "Hi, Mom Eleanor. Hope you don't mind. I came in to water your plants because I saw it was really hot and I thought they were going to wilt. And then I saw this dress in your closet and it looked so cute. I tried it on and it fits perfectly. You don't wear it anymore, right? It looks really vintage. Can I keep it?" "No. After all, you have so many dresses." My hands were trembling. The grocery bag slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. A bottle of oil rolled to her feet. She didn't even move to pick it up. "Brittany, take off that dress right now." My voice came out harder than I intended. She blinked, surprised. "Why are you getting mad? It's just a dress. You weren't even using it. It was stored away. It was stored away because it is special. My husband gave me that dress. Take it off, please." She stood up slowly with that expression of an offended victim, which I would later learn to recognize perfectly. She went to my room and returned 5 minutes later with her own clothes on and the dress hanging from her arm. She handed it to me as if she were doing me a huge favor. "I didn't know it was such a big deal. You should have said so. I'm not a mind reader." She left, without saying goodbye. I heard her slam the door harder than necessary. I stood there holding my dress, feeling like someone had profaned something sacred. I took it to my room and smelled it. It didn't smell like Arthur anymore. Now it smelled like Brittany's sickly sweet perfume. That night I cried for the first time since the funeral. The next morning, Mason called me, furious. "How could you humiliate Brittany like that? She came home crying, saying you treated her like a thief. She just tried on a dress. Was it necessary to scream at her?" "I didn't scream at her. I asked her to take it off because it was important to me. She says you were very aggressive, that you made her feel horrible. Mom, Brittany is trying to get close to you, and you reject her at every turn. Do you know how hard it is for her to have such a cold mother-in-law?" Cold. That word stuck in my chest like an infected splinter. I wasn't cold. I just wanted my boundaries respected. But apparently, asking for respect made me the villain. Mason. She entered my house without warning. She went through my closet. She put on a dress that was deeply personal to me. "It's not normal." "Oh, Mom. Always exaggerating. The house is big. She just wants to help you. You should be happy she cares about you. Other mothers-in-law would beg for a daughter-in-law like that." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in the kitchen looking at the phone, wondering when exactly my son had stopped listening to me, when my feelings had become irrelevant, when saying no had become an act of cruelty. That afternoon, I changed the hiding place of my spare key, the one I left under the geranium pot for emergencies. I put it inside a hollowed-out book in my study, a place no one would think to look. I thought that would be enough, but I forgot that Mason had already given Brittany his own copy, and that she clearly had no intention of returning it. The following weeks were a slow nightmare that infiltrated my life like mold in the walls. Brittany started showing up without notice, always with excuses that sounded reasonable on the surface but hid something darker underneath. I was passing by and brought a cake. "I came to water the plants because you forget to do it." Mason asked me to check if you needed anything from the supermarket, always entering with her own key, always catching me off guard. In my pajamas, without makeup, eating alone in the kitchen, reading in the garden, private moments that she invaded with her smile and her fabricated reasons. One Thursday, I came home from my silver sneakers yoga class and found her in my bedroom, standing in front of my open closet, touching my clothes, checking drawers. "What are you doing here?" She turned around without any apparent shame, as if being discovered rummaging through my things was the most normal thing in the world. "I was looking for that cream-colored sweater I saw the other time. It's cold in my apartment, and I thought you wouldn't be using it. You have so many nice things stored away. It's a shame no one takes advantage of them." I felt the blood pounding in my temples. I breathed deeply. I counted to 10, like they taught me in the grief therapy I attended after Arthur's death. "Brittany, this has to stop. You cannot enter my house when I am not here. You cannot go through my things. This is my privacy." She closed the closet with a dramatic sigh. "Oh, Mom Eleanor, you are so distrustful. What do you think I'm going to do? Rob you? We're family. Family shares. Besides, Mason says this house is too big for you alone, that you should consider moving to a smaller apartment and selling this property. We could use that money to buy ourselves a bigger house. Mason and I are planning to have kids soon and we'll need space." I froze, processing what I had just heard. They had been talking about selling my house. My house. The one I bought with my husband. The one we paid for with blood and tears. The one that holds every memory of my adult life. And they hadn't even had the decency to consult me first. This house is not for sale. Well, think about it. Mason says the maintenance must cost you a fortune. And what do you need 4 bedrooms for? It's selfish to have so much unused space when there are people who need it. Selfish. The first time that word was thrown at me. But it wouldn't be the last. Brittany walked out of my room, passing by me as if I were a piece of furniture. I heard her open the refrigerator and pour herself some juice. My juice. In my kitchen. Without asking permission. Then she left, leaving the dirty glass on the table. That night I confronted Mason over the phone. I told him Brittany had mentioned selling the house and that it was never going to happen. That this was my property and my decision. No one said, "You have to sell it right now, Mom. We were just thinking about the future. You're not going to live forever. It would be more practical for you to move into something manageable now, while you can still decide, instead of waiting for it to be an emergency. I am 65 years old, Mason. Not 85. I am perfectly capable of maintaining my own house. Brittany says she saw you forget to water the plants several times. Brittany says. Everything revolved around what Brittany said. My word no longer carried weight against the narrative she was building. I was the forgetful old woman who needed supervision. She was the concerned daughter-in-law coming to the rescue. Mason, I need you to ask Brittany to return the key to me. Long silence on the other end. Then an uncomfortable laugh. Mom, that's ridiculous. What if you have an emergency? What if you fall and we need to get in? Brittany has the key for your safety. Then give a key to you, not her. Brittany and I are the same. We are a married couple. I can't believe you're being so petty with your own daughter-in-law. Do you know how many of her friends complain that their mothers-in-law hate them? She always defends them. She says you are different. But you're starting to behave exactly like those bitter old women. Bitter old women. My son had called me a bitter old woman for wanting privacy in my own home. I hung up the phone, feeling a void in my chest I didn't know how to fill. That night I didn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I had lost my son. At what moment Brittany had poisoned him against me so completely. But the worst was yet to come. Because Brittany wasn't satisfied with surprise visits and borrowed clothes without permission. Brittany wanted more. Much more. It was a Saturday in May. I had gone to visit my sister, who lives in the next town over. I left Friday night and planned to return Sunday afternoon. 2 days away. I left the house locked. All windows secured. Lights programmed to turn on automatically. Everything under control. I arrived Sunday at 4 in the afternoon. Tired from the 3-hour bus ride. Looking forward to a bath and getting settled. I opened the door and instantly knew something was terribly wrong. There was noise inside. Voices, music, smell of food. I walked in slowly, feeling my heart accelerate dangerously. The scene I found in my living room left me breathless. Brittany was lying on my sofa eating popcorn. Her mother, Linda, occupied my favorite armchair, the one Arthur used for reading, and that no one else had touched since his death. Her sister, Madison, was sitting on the floor with a plate of food. And the worst, the absolutely unforgivable. There was a man I didn't know coming out of my bathroom. A guy around 30 with tattoos on his arms who saw me and smiled as if he had every right to be there. Hey, you must be Britt's mother-in-law. I'm Tyler, Madison's boyfriend. Nice house. Brittany looked up and waved at me as if this were completely normal. Oh, Mom Eleanor, you're early. I thought you'd be back later. We're watching movies. Want to join? My voice came out like a strangled whisper. What is going on here? Linda, her mother, looked at me with that condescending expression I would later recognize as a family trait. Brittany invited us to spend the weekend. She said you wouldn't be here, and the house is huge. You wouldn't want us staying in a hotel spending money when there's so much space available here, right? She invited her family to my house, without asking me, as if it were hers, as if I didn't exist. I saw they had used my kitchen. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, pots with leftover food, glasses everywhere. I saw suitcases in the hallway. 3 large suitcases. They had brought luggage. They planned to stay for several days. Brittany, I need to talk to you. Now. Outside. She followed me to the garden with that expression of teenage annoyance, as if I were the nuisance interrupting her fun. What is the problem? The problem is that you brought your family to my house without my permission. The problem is that you are using my space as if it were yours. The problem is that this is getting completely out of control. She crossed her arms. Her face changed. She was no longer the sweet and concerned daughter-in-law. It was something colder, more calculating. The house is big, Eleanor. You don't even use all of it. You have 4 bedrooms for 1 person. It's a waste. My family needed a place to stay this weekend, and I thought I'd be helpful. But I see you're one of those selfish people who prefer to have empty spaces rather than help others. This is my house, Brittany. Technically, it's also Mason's. He is your son. He has a right to use this house. And I am his wife. What is his is mine. I stood looking at her, unable to process the audacity of what she had just said. Technically, it's also Mason's. As if my son had any legal right over a property I bought and paid for completely. As if 30 years of mortgage in my name meant nothing. As if the fact of being my son automatically granted him shared ownership of my assets. But the most terrifying thing wasn't what she said, but the conviction with which she said it. Brittany really believed she had a right to my house. This house is solely in my name. Mason has no legal right to it. Brittany smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. For now, but when you're gone, everything will be Mason's, and therefore mine. So really, we're just speeding up the inevitable. Why wait? We could start enjoying this space now all together as a family. I felt something icy run down my spine. This woman was planning my life after my death, counting my inheritance before I was even sick. She saw my house not as my home, but as her future property. And she said it openly, without any shame. I want your family to leave. Now. Oh, Eleanor, don't be dramatic. It's already late. Where do you want them to go? My mom has back problems. She can't be traveling at this hour. Let them stay tonight and they'll leave early tomorrow. I promise. It wasn't a request. It was a statement. She had already decided. My opinion was irrelevant. I went back into the house feeling like an intruder in my own home. Linda was still in Arthur's armchair. Madison had turned up the volume on the TV. Tyler walked out of the kitchen with a beer. My beer. From the 6-pack I kept in the fridge for when Mason came to visit. Excuse me, ma'am. Do you have more beers? I already drank the last one. I didn't answer. I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat on the edge of my bed listening to the laughter coming from downstairs. The loud TV, steps going up and down the stairs, someone using my bathroom. The toilet chain that needed repair and made that particular noise I knew perfectly. Voices in the guest room. They had set up in there. On the sheets my mother had embroidered. In the bed where no one slept because that space was sacred. I called Mason. He answered with a sleepy voice. It was 9 at night, and he was already asleep. Mason, your wife brought her entire family to my house without warning me. I need you to come and get them out of here. I heard a long, tired sigh. Mom, it's 9 p.m. I'm not going to drive 40 minutes to create unnecessary drama. Brittany told me they were going to stay this weekend. She said she had told you. She lied to me. I was at your aunt's house. I didn't know anything. Well, it was a misunderstanding. Let them sleep and they'll leave tomorrow. It's not a big deal. Mason. There is a man I don't know, using my bathroom. Your mother-in-law is in your father's armchair. This isn't right. That man is Madison's boyfriend. He's good people. Mom, you need to learn to share. The house is big. It's not going to kill you to have company for one night. Maybe it'll even do you good. You live very isolated. He hung up. He simply hung up. He wouldn't come. He wouldn't defend me. I was alone in this. That night I didn't leave my room. I heard them make a bonfire in my backyard. How they yelled and laughed until 2 in the morning. Someone broke something. I heard the sound of glass shattering, and then laughter. At 3 in the morning, there was finally silence. I peeked out the window and saw my garden chairs in disarray. Beer cans on the grass, dirty plates on the outdoor table, the mess they had left illuminated by the moonlight. I didn't sleep all night. I sat on my bed hugging the pillow that still held the shape of Arthur's head, wondering how I had reached this point, how I had lost so much control over my own life. At 7 in the morning, I heard movement downstairs. Voices, the smell of coffee, my coffee. I waited until 9 to go out, thinking they would have left by then. I went down the stairs and encountered another scene that stole my breath. Linda was making breakfast in my kitchen, using my skillets, my eggs, my bread. Madison was setting the table. Brittany was sitting checking her phone. Tyler was watching TV in my living room. No one was getting ready to leave. No one was packing. "Good morning, Mom, Eleanor. Want breakfast? I made enough for everyone." Linda's voice was sweet, but there was something underneath, an undercurrent of possession, as if she were the lady of the house and I the unexpected visitor. "I thought you were leaving early." Brittany looked up from her phone. "Oh, yes, but my mom woke up with back pain. She needs to rest a little more. We'll leave after lunch. It's no bother, right? After all, you have nothing to do today." How did she know what I had or didn't have to do? But she was right about something. I had no plans. I just wanted my house empty, my space back, my peace restored. But I didn't say anything. I poured myself coffee and sat at the table in my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger, watching how this alien family consumed my food and occupied my space with a naturalness that sickened me. They left at 6 in the evening, 10 hours later than promised. They left the house a disaster. Wet towels on the bathroom floor, beds unmade, dirty dishes in the sink, food stains on the tablecloth my grandmother had crocheted, a broken glass hidden under the sofa, cigarette butts in the garden, even though I had made it clear there was no smoking on my property. I spent 4 hours cleaning, 4 hours erasing the trace of their invasion. I found something that froze my blood in the drawer of my nightstand. Someone had been rummaging there. My personal documents were slightly disorganized. The deed to the house, my will, everything had been touched and reviewed. Brittany had been investigating, confirming that the house was indeed solely in my name, looking for some way to claim it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I didn't know it yet. I still believed I could fix this with words, with firmer boundaries, with honest conversations. I didn't understand that I was dealing with someone who respected no boundaries, who viewed my kindness as weakness, who interpreted my attempts at peace as invitations to continue invading. I called Mason the next day. I told him about the reviewed documents, about the 4 hours of cleaning, about how disrespectful it all had been. I hoped he would finally understand, that he would finally see what his wife was doing. "Mom, you're paranoid. No one went through your documents. You probably moved them yourself and forgot. Brittany told me you were super hostile all weekend, that you didn't speak a word to them, that you made them feel uncomfortable. Her family left with the impression that you are a bitter woman, bitter, paranoid, forgetful, hostile, all the adjectives Brittany had carefully planted in my son's mind. I was no longer his concerned mother. I was a problem that needed to be managed, an obstacle between him and marital bliss. Mason, I just want privacy in my house. Then maybe you should sell it and move to a smaller place where you don't have to worry about extra space." There it was, the real plan. Get rid of me and my house, Brittany had convinced him. And he blindly agreed with everything. I hung up without saying goodbye. And for the first time, I allowed a dark thought to cross my mind. A thought I would have previously rejected as exaggerated. Maybe my son wasn't on my side anymore. The following weeks were a silent psychological war. Brittany had found my weak point and was exploiting it without mercy. She knew I didn't want to create problems between her and Mason. She knew I loved my son too much to force him to choose between us. And she used that knowledge as a weapon. Every invasion came wrapped in justifications that sounded reasonable on the surface. Every violation of my space was presented as an act of family love, and when I protested, I automatically became the selfish villain, rejecting gestures of affection. I started finding evidence of her secret visits. A used plate I hadn't dirtied, A damp towel when I hadn't showered that day. The coffee level lower than I remembered. Little things that made me doubt my own sanity. Had I really left that window open? Had I moved that book? Had I used that cup? Brittany was driving me crazy with her phantom presence. She entered when I went out, touched my things, left minimal traces, enough for me to notice, but not enough for me to prove it. One Tuesday, I arrived from my appointment with the cardiologist and found my bed unmade. The sheets jumbled, the pillow with a fresh indentation. Someone had slept there, in my bed. In the sacred space where Arthur and I had shared 30 years of intimacy. I put my hand on the mattress, and it was still warm. Brittany had been here less than an hour ago. She had lain in my bed as if it were hers, as if she were testing how it would feel when she was finally the owner. I checked the whole house. My drawers had been opened again. My underwear was disorganized. Someone had tested my perfumes. The bottles were in a different order on my vanity. Food was missing in the kitchen. A package of cookies I had bought 2 days before was empty in the trash. Half a gallon of milk less. 3 apples missing from the fruit bowl. Brittany wasn't just invading my space. She was consuming my resources, eating my food, using my things, living my life when I wasn't looking. I called Mason from the landline because I no longer trusted my cell phone to be private. I had the terrible suspicion that Brittany had managed to access my passwords somehow. I had noticed my apps opening by themselves sometimes, that my phone got hot when I wasn't using it. Small signs that someone else was monitoring my digital life. Mason, your wife was in my house today. She slept in my bed, ate my food. This has to end. Silence on the other end. Then a sigh that sounded more like annoyance than concern. Do you have proof? Did you see her? Do you have photos? I don't need photos. I can feel that someone was here. Mom, listen to yourself. You can feel it. Do you know how that sounds? Brittany is at work all day. She doesn't have time to go to your house to take naps. You're making things up because you can't stand her. Admit it. I am not making anything up. Someone slept in my bed. The pillow still has the warmth. Or maybe you took a nap and forgot. You've been forgetting a lot of things lately. Maybe you should go to the doctor. Get checked out. At your age, it's normal for memory to start failing. At my age, my 38-year-old son was treating me as if I had senile dementia, as if my 65 years had automatically turned me into a confused old woman who couldn't distinguish reality from imagination. Brittany had convinced him that I was losing my mind, and he believed her over me. Mason, I know what I saw, what you think you saw. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Brittany and I have been talking. We are worried about you. You live alone in that huge house. You have no supervision. You could fall, and no one would find out for days. You could leave the stove on and burn the house down. You need help, and you're not accepting it. Supervision. That sounded to me as if I were a child incapable of taking care of herself. The plan was becoming clearer. Paint me as incompetent, as senile, as dangerous to myself. And then use that as justification to take control of my life and my property. I don't need supervision. I am perfectly fine. Then prove it. Let Brittany help you. Let her come clean your house. Prepare you meals. Make sure you take your medications. If you're really fine, you won't have a problem with that. It was a perfect trap. If I said I didn't need help, it was because I was in denial about my deterioration. If I accepted the help, I gave Brittany unlimited access to continue her invasion. There was no right answer. Anything I said would be used against me. I'll think about it. Don't think too long, because if you keep this up, we're going to have to take more serious measures. There are very good assisted living facilities for people your age, places where you'd be cared for and safe. Assisted living. Nursing homes. He was threatening to lock me in a nursing home. My own son, the person I had raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. Now he saw me as a problem that needed to be solved, an obstacle between him and his early inheritance. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. I sat in the empty living room of my house and cried for the first time in months. I cried for my lost son, for the destroyed relationship, for the loneliness consuming me, for the fear I now felt in my own home, because it was no longer my refuge. It was a prison where Brittany had the keys and I was the prisoner. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, listening to every noise, every creak of the floorboards, every sound of the wind against the windows, convinced that Brittany was going to appear at any moment, that I would find her standing next to my bed watching me sleep, that there was no longer any safe place. At 3 a.m, I heard a noise in the kitchen, a soft thud, as if someone had closed the refrigerator door. I got up in silence. I grabbed the wooden cane Arthur used to walk with after his knee surgery. I went down the stairs slowly, feeling my heart beat so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. The kitchen light was on. I had turned it off before going up. I was completely sure of that. I entered the kitchen prepared to confront Brittany, prepared to call the police, prepared for whatever, but there was no one. The kitchen was empty, but the light was on. And on the table was a glass of water, half finished. Water I hadn't poured. I touched the glass. It was still cold. Someone had used it in the last few minutes. I checked the whole house. All doors were locked, all windows secured. There were no signs of forced entry, which meant whoever had entered had a key. Brittany had been here. She had entered while I slept. She had been in my kitchen, drinking water, moving through my house like a ghost. And then she had left without making noise, leaving only that glass as proof of her invasion. Or maybe I was going crazy, like everyone said. Maybe I really had gone down to drink water and forgot. Maybe I left the light on. Maybe this was all a product of my deteriorating imagination and growing paranoia. That was the most terrifying part, that I no longer trusted my own perception of reality. Brittany had achieved her goal. She had made me doubt myself. But something inside me hardened that night. A part of me that had been asleep woke up with cold fury. If they wanted to play dirty, I could learn. If they wanted to make me look crazy, I could disappear before they managed to lock me up. If they wanted my house, they could have it, empty, without furniture, without memories, without me. That early morning, sitting in my kitchen with that phantom glass in front of me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give them the pleasure of seeing me break. I wasn't going to hand over my dignity. If they wanted my house, let them have it. But I wouldn't be in it to witness their victory. I would go. I would disappear. And they would never know where to find me. It was in that moment of cold and desperate clarity that the plan was born. The plan that would change everything. The plan that would finally give me back control of my own life. The next morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in months. The fear had transformed into something more useful: determination, strategy, calculated silence. If Brittany could plan in secret, so could I. If she could invade without being detected, I could disappear in the same way. She had taught me that silent warfare was the most effective. Now I would use her own tactics against her. The first thing I did was act completely normal. Smile when Mason called. Answer Brittany's messages with fake kindness. Keep the exact routine as always. Yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Market on Saturdays. Doctor's visit once a month. I couldn't give them any sign that something had changed. They had to think I was still the confused and scared old woman they could manipulate. But in secret, I began my investigation. I opened a new email account that no one knew about. I used only public library computers to look for options. Apartments in other cities. Places where no one knew me. Where I could start from scratch without the weight of this story on my shoulders. I looked for cities more than 800 miles away, places with good weather, with decent medical services, with a reasonable cost of living for my $2,500 monthly pension. I found a condo in a coastal city 800 miles from here, Clearwater, Florida. An apartment complex for seniors with 24-hour security, guards at the entrance, cameras in every hallway. Access only with an electronic card. No one could enter without authorization. No one could violate me ever again. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, kitchen integrated into the living room. Barely 450 square feet. But it was perfect, manageable, safe, mine. It cost $1,200 a month including maintenance, plus another $100 for utilities. I would have $1,200 left for food and expenses. Tight, but possible. I spoke with the manager over the phone from a public payphone. I explained my situation without giving compromising details. I just said I needed a change, that I was looking for privacy and security. She understood without needing full explanations. She told me many women my age arrived there looking for the same thing: peace after chaos. To pay the deposit and the first 3 months of rent, I needed $4,800. I had savings, but they were in the bank where Mason was a joint holder on the account. It had never seemed like a problem. He was my son. I trusted him. But now that shared account was a vulnerability. If I withdrew a large amount, he would see it. He would ask questions. Brittany would find out. The plan would be ruined. So I started withdrawing little by little. $50 every time I went to the supermarket, $30 when I paid at the pharmacy, $20 from the hardware store. Small amounts that looked like normal expenses for an elderly woman. I kept the cash in an envelope inside a hollow book in my library. The same book where I had hidden the spare key. No one checked my books. They were old and boring. Advanced mathematics, linear algebra, analytic geometry, perfect for hiding secrets. It took me 6 weeks to gather the money, 6 weeks of acting like nothing was wrong, of allowing Brittany to keep showing up without warning, of smiling when she arrived with Linda and Madison for coffee without an invitation, of saying nothing when she used my bathroom and left wet towels on the floor, of ignoring when she opened my refrigerator and ate what she wanted. Every invasion hurt me, but now I had a purpose. Every violation brought me closer to freedom. During those weeks, I documented everything. I took photos with my old phone that I no longer used and kept hidden. Photos of the unmade bed after she left, of the dirty dishes she left behind, of my used clothes thrown in the laundry hamper, of the beer cans in my garden after she brought people over. I kept every piece of evidence in a hidden folder, not to show Mason because I knew he wouldn't believe me, but for myself, to remind me that I wasn't crazy, that this was real, that I had valid reasons to disappear. Brittany was becoming bolder. She didn't even try to hide her invasions anymore. One day I came home from the library and found her reorganizing my living room, moving furniture, taking down paintings Arthur and I had chosen together and replacing them with cheap prints she had bought. I'm modernizing the place a bit. Mom, Eleanor. It looked very outdated, very elderly. It needed a refresh. Outdated, elderly. My house that was a museum of my life was now outdated. My carefully preserved memories were ugly and needed to be replaced. I breathed deep and smiled. How considerate you are, Brittany. She looked at me surprised by the lack of resistance. She expected a fight, expected me to explode, but I just smiled and went to my room. It didn't matter what she did with the living room anymore. In 3 weeks, I wouldn't be here to see it. I hired a small moving company, one that worked with discretion. I explained that I needed to move my belongings in several loads on different days, that no one could know. The owner was an older gentleman who understood without judging. He told me he had helped other women in similar situations. I didn't ask for details. I just thanked him for his understanding. I started packing at night when I was sure no one would come. Small boxes, easy to move. I marked them as donations so if anyone saw them they wouldn't suspect. The clothes I loved most, the irreplaceable photos, important documents, Arthur's jewelry box, my mother's books, the things that had real emotional value. Everything else could stay. The furniture, the appliances, the decorations, material things that could be replaced. The important thing was what I couldn't buy again. The movers came early in the morning when Brittany was still asleep. They loaded 3 or 4 boxes, took them to a temporary storage unit, and left before the neighborhood woke up. No one noticed anything. It was as if my belongings were slowly evaporating without a trace. Mason started pressuring me more about selling the house. He called 2 or 3 times a week with the same speech. That I needed something smaller, that the maintenance was too expensive, that at my age I should simplify, always with Brittany whispering strategies in the background. I could hear her even if she didn't speak directly, her presence poisoning every conversation. Mom, I found a perfect apartment for you. It's close to us. You could visit us more often. Brittany could go see you every day. Take care of you. Take care of me. That word gave me chills. Taking care of me meant controlling me, monitoring me, deciding what I could and couldn't do, turning me into a child who needed constant supervision. And later, when I was completely dependent on them, I'd sign any paper they put in front of me, including the one transferring the house to Mason's name. Let me think about it. Son, there's not much to think about. This is for your own good. Brittany and I just want what's best for you. Lies wrapped in fake concern. Every word calculated to make me feel guilty for resisting. But I wasn't falling into that trap anymore. I had woken up, and now I was just counting the days until my escape. 2 weeks before the planned date for my final move, Brittany did something that confirmed I had made the right decision. I arrived from my dentist appointment and found a locksmith changing the locks on my house. On my house, without my permission, without my knowledge. Excuse me. Who hired you? The locksmith showed me a work order signed by Brittany Garcia, my daughter-in-law's maiden name. Missus Garcia said you had lost your keys several times, that for security you needed new locks. I'm almost done. I stood paralyzed watching this man install new locks on my own house without my authorization. Brittany had taken a step that crossed all boundaries. Now she wasn't just invading my space. Now she was trying to physically control my access to my own property. This wasn't psychological manipulation anymore. It was a direct hit, an attempt to take real and tangible possession. Stop right now. The locksmith looked at me confused. But Mrs. Garcia said you had authorized this? I am the owner of this house. My name is on the deed. That woman has no right to change anything without my permission. I want you to leave. Now. The man packed his tools quickly, clearly feeling uncomfortable being in the middle of a family conflict. He left the old locks for me and left apologizing, but the damage was already done. One of the doors had the new lock installed. Brittany had managed to change at least that entrance, and she had the only keys. I called Mason immediately. This time I couldn't keep the calm in my voice. This time rage broke through my careful acting. Your wife hired a locksmith to change the locks on my house without my permission. This is illegal. This is trespassing. This has to stop now. I expected apologies. I expected shock. I expected him to finally see what his wife was doing. But what I heard was worse than indifference. It was complicity. Mom, I gave Brittany permission to do that. You lost your keys last week. You called us at 2 a.m. saying you couldn't get into your house. Have you forgotten already? That's why we needed new locks, for your safety. I had never lost my keys. I had never called at 2 a.m. That never happened. But Mason was saying it with such conviction that for a second I doubted. Had it really happened? Had I forgotten? Was I losing my memory like everyone insisted? No, I clung to my sanity. This was gaslighting in its purest form, inventing events that never occurred and repeating them until the victim doubted their own reality. Brittany was building a narrative of my incompetence, and Mason was her willing accomplice. That never happened. Mason, check your phone. There are no calls from me at that time. Check the history. I already deleted it, but I know it happened. Brittany remembers it too. She answered. You talked to her. You told her you felt confused. Mom, you need to accept that you have a problem. 2 against 1. They had their story coordinated, their lies aligned, and I had no way to prove they were lying. That's how perfect manipulation worked, creating situations that left no evidence. Word against word. And their version always sounded more credible because they were 2, and I was just a single confused old woman. I want the new keys. Now, Brittany has them, and she's going to keep them, for your own good. So when you have another emergency, we can get in and help you. He hung up before I could answer. I stood there in my living room, feeling the walls closing in on me. Brittany had keys to my house, and I had no way to take them from her without looking like the crazy woman everyone said I was. If I called the police, they would say it was a family matter, that my son had a right to worry about his mother, that the lock change was for my safety. No one would believe me. But there was something they didn't know. In 2 weeks, I wouldn't be here. Brittany could have all the keys she wanted. She could enter and leave freely, because the house would be empty, and I would be 800 miles away where her keys were useless. That night, I hired another locksmith, a different one. I paid him in cash to change all the remaining locks. I explained I had a security issue and needed new locks immediately. I didn't give details. He didn't ask. He did the job in 2 hours. He gave me 3 sets of keys. I kept one in my purse, another in the hollow book in my library. The third I hid in the garden, buried under the hydrangea bush Arthur and I planted on our 5th anniversary. Now Brittany couldn't get in. Her keys no longer worked, and she wouldn't know until she tried to use her unauthorized access. I imagined her face when she put the key in, and it didn't turn. The rage she would feel realizing I had counterattacked. That image gave me the first genuine satisfaction in months. As expected, Brittany tried to enter 2 days later. I was home. I heard the key scrape in the lock, trying, failing, trying again, then banging on the door, hard, insistent. "Mom, Eleanor, open the door. My key isn't working." "You changed the locks." I stayed silent on the other side, not opening, not answering, letting her feel for the first time what it was like to be excluded, to be rejected, to not have access. "Eleanor, I know you're there. I saw your shadow in the window. Open the door now. I need to talk to you." The knocking became stronger, more desperate. I could hear the rage in every impact of her fist against the wood. Finally, she got tired. I heard her steps walking away, her car engine starting, and then silence. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded. 15 calls from Mason, 20 text messages, all with the same furious tone. How dared I change the locks? How dared I leave Brittany outside? This proved I was out of control, that I needed immediate intervention. I didn't answer a single call. I didn't read any message until the end. I simply turned off the phone and put it in a drawer. The silence that followed was glorious. For the first time in months, my house was in real silence. No invaders, no manipulators, no voices telling me I was crazy. Just me and my walls and my memories still intact. But I knew this was only temporary. Mason would come. He would bring Brittany. They would demand explanations. They would probably threaten to commit me somewhere. I had to accelerate the plan. I couldn't wait 2 more weeks. I had to leave now. I called the moving company from the payphone on the corner. I told them I needed to move up the date, that it had to be tomorrow. The owner hesitated. He said he didn't have enough staff available with such short notice. I offered him double the agreed amount, $300 instead of $150 for the urgent fee. It was almost all the cash I had left, but it was worth every penny. He accepted. That night, I packed the last of what was missing. Clothes for 2 weeks, toiletries, medications, personal documents. The house deed I kept in my personal safe. My updated will I had made 3 years ago, where everything was left to Mason, but with the condition that he couldn't sell the house until 5 years after my death. A clause I had put in thinking of preserving Arthur's memories. Now that clause would serve to frustrate Brittany's plans, at least temporarily. I called my estate attorney, the same one who had handled Arthur's will. I explained I was moving and needed to update my contact information. I gave him the address of the new apartment. I asked him not to share that information with anyone under any circumstances, not even with my son. He asked if I was okay, if I needed help. I told him I was better than ever, that I was finally taking control of my life. I heard the smile in his voice when he told me he understood perfectly. I also called my bank. I closed the account shared with Mason. I opened a new one solely in my name at a branch in the coastal city. I transferred all my funds, my savings of 32 years, $40,000 Arthur and I had saved for emergencies, and to leave something for Mason when we were gone. Money I was now protecting from being stolen before my death. I cut all house services effective in 3 days. Electricity, water, gas, internet, landline, everything. When Brittany tried to enter again, she wouldn't just find the locks changed. She would find a dead house, without life, without utilities, without anything to take. The movers arrived at 6 in the morning. They loaded everything in 4 hours. The furniture I wanted to keep, the boxes with my belongings, the lamps Arthur had restored, the rocking chair where I nursed Mason, the antique mirror that had belonged to my grandmother. Everything that meant something was carefully wrapped and loaded onto the truck. At 10 in the morning, the house was empty, completely empty, bare walls, clean floors, rooms that echoed when I walked through them. I stood in the middle of the living room where I had lived 30 years and felt a strange mixture of pain and liberation. This house held all my history, But that history was now being contaminated by Brittany's invasion. It was time to write a new chapter somewhere else. I left a letter on the living room floor. A letter for Mason. Short, direct, without excessive emotions. Mason, I moved. I need space and peace that I can no longer find here. The house is still mine. It is in my name. I will pay the taxes from wherever I am. Do not try to look for me. When I am ready to re-establish contact, I will call you. This is not a punishment. It is survival. Your mother who loves you but needs to protect herself. I locked the door. All 3 new locks. I walked toward the taxi waiting for me on the corner. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I might change my mind. I might feel guilt. I might convince myself I was exaggerating. But I wasn't exaggerating. I was saving myself. The trip to the coastal city took 19 hours by Greyhound bus. 19 hours to process everything, to cry in silence, to feel the weight of what I had just done. I had abandoned my house. I had fled from my own son. I had cut the only family connection I had left. But I had survived, and that was what mattered. I arrived at my new apartment at 3 in the afternoon the next day. The condo was exactly as described in the photos. A sand-colored, 5-story building surrounded by palm trees and well-kept gardens. The main entrance had a gatehouse with a security guard who checked my ID before letting me pass. I registered at the administration office, presenting my lease and the documents I had sent by mail weeks before. The manager, a woman around 50 named Brenda, welcomed me with a warm smile that didn't seem forced. "Welcome, Eleanor. Your apartment is on the 3rd floor. Quiet, with a view of the interior garden. I think you're going to like it." She handed me an electronic key card to access the building and the elevator. She explained that without that card, no one could go up. That visitors had to be announced by the guard and authorized by the resident before being allowed in. That there were cameras in every hallway and in all common areas. I felt safe for the first time in months. The apartment was small but perfect. 1 bedroom with a large window that let in natural light. A full bathroom with grab bars installed for seniors. An integrated kitchen with an electric stove and compact refrigerator. A dining area that fit exactly my favorite sofa and the 2-seat table I had brought. The walls were white and clean. The tile floor shone. It smelled of fresh paint and a new beginning. The movers arrived 3 hours later. They brought up my furniture and boxes with care. They arranged everything where I directed them. In 2 hours, the apartment started to look like a home. My rocking chair by the window. Arthur's photos on the nightstand. My mother's books on the small shelf that fit perfectly in the corner. The home was tiny compared to what I had left behind, but it was completely mine. No one else had keys. No one else had access. No one could invade this sacred space. That first night, I slept deeply, for the first time in half a year. Without fear that someone would enter while I slept. Without anxiety waiting to hear strange noises. Without needing to check the locks 5 times before going to bed. The silence of the apartment was absolute. Real and tangible peace enveloping every corner. I woke up at 7 in the morning with the sun entering my window. I made coffee in my small pot. I sat on the tiny balcony overlooking the interior garden where other residents were doing morning exercises. A gray-haired lady waved at me from below. I waved back. No one here knew my history. No one knew about Brittany or Mason or the house I had left behind. Here I was, simply Eleanor, a 65-year-old woman starting over. I turned on my phone for the first time in 2 days. Exploding was an understatement. I had 237 notifications, 189 missed calls, most from Mason, some from Brittany. There were even calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Probably Linda and Madison recruited for the harassment army. The text messages were increasingly desperate and then more furious. "Mom, where are you? Answer the phone. We went to your house and it's empty. What did you do? This is crazy. Brittany is hysterical. I need to know you're okay. If you don't answer, I'm calling the police. You are selfish. How could you do this to us? You're going to regret it." The messages told a clear story. Brittany had tried to enter the house. She had discovered her keys didn't work. She had called Mason. They went together, tried all the entrances. Finally, Mason used his emergency key that I didn't know he had, a copy he had probably made years before. They entered the house and found the void, the bare walls. The floors without furniture, the echo of abandoned rooms, and the letter in the middle of the empty living room. I imagined the scene. Brittany screaming, Mason confused, then furious, calling me over and over while walking through the incredulous rooms, checking every closet, expecting to find my hidden things, going down to the basement, going up to the attic, looking for evidence that I hadn't really left, that this was some kind of game or misunderstanding. But it wasn't a game. It was my escape, my survival, my way of recovering control over my own existence. There was a voicemail from Brittany. I listened to it with my heart racing, but also with a dark satisfaction I didn't know I was capable of feeling. Mom, Eleanor, I don't know what is happening, but this isn't right. Mason is destroyed. I am worried. I know we've had differences, but I didn't think it would come to this. Please call us. Tell us where you are. We just want to know you're safe. Everything else we can talk about, please. The voice sounded genuinely worried, almost convincing, but I already knew that voice, that ability to sound sincere while manipulating. I wasn't falling into that trap anymore. The time for conversations and negotiations was over. Now it was time for silence. There was another voicemail from Mason. This one was different. Pure anger without a filter. Mom, this is ridiculous. You left the house empty as if you were dead. Do you have any idea what I felt entering and seeing everything like that? I thought something horrible had happened to you. Brittany almost fainted from the scare. And then we found your letter. Your damn letter accusing us of what exactly? Of worrying about you. Of wanting to help you. This is manipulation. This is cruelty. I don't know where you are, but you better appear soon because I'm going to do everything legally possible to declare you mentally incompetent. I'm going to get a court order to commit you. Clearly, you are not in your right mind. This proves it. There it was. The real threat. Using the legal system to declare me incompetent, to strip me of my autonomy, to take control of my assets, exactly what I had feared. But now that I was 800 miles away with all my documentation in order and a lawyer who knew the truth, his threats sounded empty. They would need to find me first, and I had no intention of making that easy for them. I blocked Brittany's number. Then I blocked Linda's, Madison's, the unknown numbers. I left only Mason's. My son still deserved the possibility of contacting me, even if it was to insult me. He was my only son after all. But I wouldn't answer him. Not yet. I needed him to feel the desperation, to feel what it was like to look for someone who doesn't want to be found, to feel a fraction of the fear and helplessness I had felt for months. The following days were surreal. I woke up every morning hoping this was a dream, that I would wake up in my old house with Brittany entering without knocking. But no, this was real. I was here, in my small and safe apartment, surrounded by my most precious things, with guards at the entrance who would never allow Brittany to cross without my explicit authorization. I started establishing new routines. Morning walks through the condo garden, breakfast in the small community dining room where residents gathered, surface-level conversations with neighbors who didn't ask about my past, afternoons reading on my balcony, nights watching TV shows without the weight of constant anxiety. I met a woman named Helen, who lived in the apartment next door, 72 years old, a widow too. She had arrived at the condo 2 years before, escaping a similar situation with her son and daughter-in-law. She didn't give details, and I didn't ask, but there was a silent understanding between us. We knew we had both fled from something, that we had both chosen solitude over invasion, that we both valued our peace more than family approval. I spent 3 weeks in complete silence, without answering any message, without returning any call, watching how Mason's messages went from fury to worry to guilt to manipulation and then back to fury. It was a predictable cycle. He tried all angles: filial concern, justified anger, emotional guilt. Nothing worked because I wasn't seeing the messages until days later. And by then, they no longer had the power to manipulate me. Brittany tried contacting me on Facebook, by email, by Instagram, which she didn't even know I had. Long messages about how much they missed me, about how Mason was suffering, about how she just wanted to be a good daughter-in-law, about how we misunderstood our intentions. Digital gaslighting that didn't work because I was already too far away physically and emotionally. Then the veiled threats started. Messages about how they were consulting lawyers, about how they were going to report me as a missing person, about how abandoning property could have legal consequences. Desperate attempts to scare me into coming back. But I had consulted my own lawyer. I knew I hadn't abandoned anything. The house was still in my name. Taxes were paid in advance, utilities canceled legally. There was nothing illegal about moving without telling my adult son. 1 month after my disappearance, I finally responded. Not because I felt guilt, but because the silence had served its purpose. Mason had felt the powerlessness. Brittany had experienced the frustration of not having access. Both had spent 30 days without control over me, without knowing where I was, without being able to manipulate me. It was time to establish the new rules of this relationship. I called Mason from my new phone, a number he didn't know. He answered on the second ring with a desperate voice. "Hello? Hello, Mason. It's me." Silence, heavy breathing. Then his voice cracking. "Mom, my God, Mom, where are you? Are you okay? We've been looking for you everywhere. The police, hospitals. I thought you were dead. I am perfectly fine, better than I have been in months. Where are you? I'm coming for you right now. Tell me the address." "I am not going to give you the address, and you don't need to come for me. I am not lost. I chose to leave. There is a difference." I heard how he processed my words, how worry transformed into confusion, and then into that familiar fury. "You chose? You chose to disappear as if you were dead? You chose to leave us worried sleepless for a month? Do you have any idea what you put us through?" "Yes, I have a perfect idea, because it is exactly what you put me through for 6 months. The difference is that I violated my own privacy by leaving. You violated mine by staying." "What are you talking about?" "We were just trying to help you." Brittany entered my house without permission. She slept in my bed. She wore my clothes, reviewed my documents, brought her entire family to live in my space without consulting me. She changed my locks, made me doubt my own sanity, inventing events that never occurred. And you supported her every step of the way. You called me crazy, paranoid, senile. You threatened to commit me. So yes, Mason, I chose to leave before you took away my ability to choose. Long silence. I could hear Brittany in the background asking who it was. Mason put the phone on speaker. "Mom, Eleanor, please listen to me. It was all a terrible misunderstanding. I just wanted to get close to you. I wanted us to be a real family. Maybe I went overboard, but it was because I love you. Mason and I want to take care of you." Her voice sounded sincere, but I already knew that performance. I had fallen for it too many times. "Brittany, I don't want to be taken care of. I want to be respected, and respect means accepting when someone says no. It means not entering private spaces without permission. It means understanding that generosity is not the same as invasion." "But the house was so big. You were so alone. I thought you'd like the company. If you had asked, I would have said no. That's why you never asked. Because you knew the answer and decided to ignore it." Mason took back control of the conversation with a firmer voice. "Okay, Mom, we understand. We made mistakes. But this has gone too far. Come home. Let's talk in person. Let's fix things as a family. I am not going back to that house. It is no longer my home. It was contaminated by too many violations. Now I live somewhere else. A place where I have peace, where no one enters without my permission, where I can breathe without fear." "And what about us? We just disappear from your life?" "No. But the relationship continues on my terms. You can call me at this number. We can talk on the phone. When I am ready, maybe we'll meet in some neutral place. But I am not giving you my address, and you are not going to show up without an invitation. Those days are over." Brittany intervened with a cracking voice that sounded like real tears, or very well-acted ones. "This is so unfair. I loved that house. We had so many plans. We were going to remodel, make a nursery for the baby. I was already choosing colors for the walls." I froze. Baby, nursery, choosing colors. She was planning to move into my house, not just visit it or invade it occasionally. Move in permanently. Turn my home into hers, probably expecting me to move to some nursing home or maid's quarters while they took the master bedrooms. The full plan was finally revealed without filters. "That house was not available for your plans, Brittany. It is still mine, and it will continue to be mine until I decide what to do with it. You can rent it if you want to pay market price. You can buy it if you have the $450,000 it's worth. But you are not going to simply take it. Mom, don't be ridiculous. We are your family. That house will eventually be Mason's anyway. Eventually, when I die. But I plan to live another 20 years. So I suggest you make your own plans without counting on my early inheritance. Mason finally exploded. The mask of concern fell completely. You know what? You're right. You are selfish. You always were. Dad killed himself working to give you that house, and now you abandon it as if it meant nothing. You leave it empty, rotting, while you hide who knows where. It's pathetic. That mention of Arthur hurt me more than anything else. But I didn't let my voice show it. Your father killed himself working to give us a home, not to give it to you ahead of time. He would want me to be happy. And right now, I am happier far from you than near. Then stay away. Don't come back to love us. I don't want to know anything about you until you come to your senses and act like a normal mother. Goodbye, Mason. I love you. But I love you from a distance now. When you are ready for a relationship of mutual respect, I will be here. I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, but my heart was calm. I had said everything I needed to say. I had established the boundaries clearly. Now it was up to them to decide if they wanted to respect them or lose me completely. 6 months passed. 6 months of silence from both sides. 6 months where I flourished in my small apartment. I made friends in the condo. I took painting classes at the community center. I started walking on the beach every morning, feeling the sand between my toes and the sun on my face. I recovered parts of myself I had lost at some point in marriage and motherhood. I went back to being Eleanor, not Arthur's wife, not Mason's mother, just Eleanor. One day in December, I received a message from Mason. Short. No drama. Mom, Brittany and I are in couples therapy. The therapist helped us see some things. About boundaries. About respect. I would like to talk to you if you are willing. Without Brittany. Just you and me. I read the message 3 times. Looking for hidden manipulation. Looking for traps. But it sounded genuine. Tired. Humble. I waited 2 days before answering. We can talk by video call. This Saturday at 3 in the afternoon. Saturday arrived. I connected the video call from my balcony with the ocean in the background. Mason appeared on the screen. He looked older, thinner, with deep circles under his eyes. He looked at me intently for several seconds before speaking. You look good, Mom. Happy. I am. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. You were right. Brittany went overboard. I went overboard. We didn't listen when you asked for space. We made you feel crazy when you weren't. It was abuse. The therapist called it abuse. Those words freed me from a weight I didn't know I was still carrying. Validation. Finally, someone recognized that I hadn't been exaggerating, that my pain had been real and justified. Thank you for saying that. Can we try again? Slowly. With boundaries that you establish. No pressure. I just want my mom back. I cried. For the first time since I left, I cried in front of my son. Tears of relief and cautious hope. We can try, but at my pace. And if Brittany crosses lines again, I will disappear again. This time forever. I understand. She understands too. Or so she says. Time will tell. We met 3 months later at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Just the 2 of us. We talked for 4 hours. We cried. We laughed. We remembered Arthur. We established new rules. He never asked for my exact address, and I never offered it. But we opened a small door toward possible reconciliation. Today it's been a year since I moved. My apartment remains my sanctuary. Mason visits me every 2 months on my terms. Brittany sends occasional messages that I answer briefly. The house I left behind I rented to a young family. The money covers its expenses and gives me a little extra income. Someday I will enter it again. When I have healed completely. When I no longer associate those walls with fear. I learned that establishing boundaries isn't cruelty, that protecting myself isn't selfishness, that disappearing is sometimes the only way to survive, and that real family respects spaces. The rest are just people with whom we share blood. I am 66 years old. I live alone in 450 square feet, and never in my life have I been freer.